Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive? Today we're tackling a concept that I found pretty thought-provoking. It's this idea of the third eye being blinded by money. Sounds a little intense, right?
It does grab your attention, doesn't it?
Definitely. And our source material really digs deep into this whole metaphor, exploring all these different facets. I'm really excited to break it all down with you.
Should be interesting. I think there's a lot to unpack here.
Absolutely. But before we dive into the whole blinded by money thing, maybe we should start with a quick explainer. Like, what exactly are we talking about when we say third eye? Because it sounds, kind of mystical and all that.
Yeah, definitely not talking about a literal third eye here.
Right.
It's more of a symbol, a way of representing our intuition, that inner wisdom, the ability to kind of see beyond what's right in front of us and understand deeper truths. Like that gut feeling you get sometimes, almost like an inner voice guiding you.
Okay, so it's about tapping into a deeper level of understanding, a kind of awareness that goes beyond the material world. And money, of course, is often seen as this symbol of the material world.
Exactly. And that's where this whole idea of being blinded by money comes in.
Right. It suggests there's this potential conflict, right?
Yeah, definitely. The source argues that when we focus too much on wealth, on making money, it can sometimes cloud our judgment, make us prioritize material gain over things that might actually be more important in the long run, like ethical behavior or genuine connections with other people.
I get the whole balance thing, but the source seems to really emphasize the downsides of wealth. I mean, there are tons of people who use their wealth for good, right?
Absolutely, there are. And it's important to remember that money itself isn't good or bad. It's just a tool. Like any tool, it depends on how you use it. But what the source is really getting at is the potential danger when the pursuit of wealth becomes an obsession. It can really distort your perception and lead you down a path that might not actually bring you happiness.
So it's not about demonizing money, but recognizing that an unhealthy attachment to it can prevent you from seeing what truly matters.
Exactly. It can make you blind to the bigger picture.
It makes me think of that whole Enron scandal way back in the early 2000s. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. A classic example, unfortunately.
You're driven by pure greed and this constant need for more profit.
Executives cooking the books, completely disregarding any ethical boundaries. It all eventually came crashing down. The company collapsed. So many people were hurt financially.
A pretty stark illustration of how blinded by money can play out in the real world with some really serious consequences.
And it's not just about these huge corporate scandals. It happens on a smaller scale, too, in our personal lives. The source also talks about how focusing too much on money can affect our relationships with others, even our own sense of self-worth.
Yeah, you start to judge yourself and even other people based solely on their financial success.
Exactly. It's like you start seeing people through this lens of, well, what can they do for me financially, rather than appreciating them for who they are as human beings.
You become so focused on climbing that ladder that you lose sight of the people around you, always chasing the next big thing, but never feeling truly satisfied.
That's a good point, yeah. And it's like that old saying, money can't buy happiness. You might achieve all this material success, but if it comes at the cost of your values, your relationships, your inner peace, then what's it all really worth?
It's a good question to consider.
And it's something the source really emphasizes, that true fulfillment comes from nurturing our spiritual side, connecting with something bigger than ourselves, whether that's through religious faith, a sense of community, or even just spending time in nature.
It makes me think of all those mindfulness practices that are becoming so popular these days. Meditation, yoga, nature walks, things like that. It seems like people are recognizing the need for more balance.
Yeah, I think so too. It's like we're starting to realize that true success isn't just about how much money you have in the bank. It's about living a life that feels meaningful, a life that's aligned with your values.
So it's about finding that balance. It's easy to say that money shouldn't rule our lives, but we do need it to survive. It's everywhere. So how do we prevent it from, clouding our third eye?
That's a great question. And the source actually offers some practical advice. It encourages us to shift our perspective a bit, to start viewing money as a tool, a resource to help us create the life we want, not as the ultimate goal itself.
So it's not about rejecting money or pretending it doesn't matter, but more about being conscious of the role it plays in our lives.
Exactly. And to be mindful of how our relationship with money might be affecting our choices and our outlook.
Making sure it's serving us rather than us serving it.
Exactly. So here's something to think about. How do you define success? And how can you make sure your life, your choices, are aligned with that definition, even amidst all the pressures and distractions of the material world?
That's a really powerful question to consider. It's been a fascinating deep dive today exploring this whole complex relationship between money, our values, and our spiritual well-being. Hopefully it's given you some food for thought, some new perspectives to consider.
Definitely a lot to ponder here.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep seeking that balance.
We'll see then.
See ya.